Hi everyone and welcome to episode 2 in our Gamepad widget support. In this series we're taking a look at how we use a gamepad to interact with our UI and navigate around it. In the previous episode we got our UI to open up and close based on pushing the start button on our gamepad. In this episode we're going to take a look at how we do various pages in our UI. Because we're following a sort of RPG sort of design method, we're looking at creating a title bar at the top of the screen which has the titles for each different page of our UI. So one will say character, one will be inventory, quests, map, so on. And what we're working on doing today is getting it so we can change which one we are active on and make it appear like it's active as well. So changing its appearance based on its activity. So the first thing we need to do here is design the actual individual page name. So I'm going to go on to add new and new user interface. And this is going to be called player menu page title UI. I'm going to go in here and first thing we're going to do is get rid of the canvas panel because we don't need that because we're not using absolute positioning. Instead we're just going to put in a button. Now the reason why we're using a button is because we also want this UI to be usable by keyboard and mouse players. So whereas a gamepad controller you will use the shoulder buttons to navigate between pages, with a keyboard and mouse you want to allow the player to actually be able to click on it. So we need a button for this. So on this button we're going to put in a text for the name of it. Now the text block I'm going to change its size to a 48, make it a bit bigger, and leave it as white in colour. But my button I want to make invisible. So I'm going to change its background colour in the alpha to be 0. So there's my button, my title set up. So I'm going to do a couple of things here to set things up for later use. First thing to do is change the name of the button. So I'm going to change the name here to page button, a page name button, sorry. And text, I'm going to change the name to page name text. And I'm going to tick the is variable button for this. We're then going to go into our graph editor. In our graph editor, we need a variable for the page name itself. So I'm going to go page name, and we're going to change that to a text value, and we're going to make it editable. So tick that on. We're then going to make another variable for determining whether or not it's active. I'm going to go is active, and this will be a boolean. Click in editable again and compile. We're now going to go back to our design view. In our design view, we're going to make it so the text changes colour based on its activity. So if it's the active page, we're going to change the colour of the text to a different colour. And when it's unactive, we'll make it go back to white. So with the page text selected, go to where you see appearance and see colour and opacity. You'll see the option to choose a colour, and also you'll see a bind button. Click on bind and choose create binding. In the resulting function, we're going to change the name of it to something a bit more tangible. So I'm going to go in here and change the name to set as active page. And when it's set as active page, this function is going to be called both times for activating and deactivating the page. So on is active, I'm going to drag this out and choose get, and this will go into a select color. This select color will output a color value based on whether or not the boolean here is true or false. If it's true, it will choose A. If it's false, it will choose B. So with A, we're going to make it an orangey color. And when it's B, we're going to make it white. Now, if we hover over the return value of this, you'll see it's a linear color structure. And if we hover over the return value of our function, it needs a slate color structure. So we need to make a slate color from this. So we go make slate color. And then you can plug that into your return value and click compile. So every time we call this function will update this color of this text, and you'll get it from the isActive variable. The next thing we need to do is bind the text value here to our page name text variable. So choose bind and choose your page name. Click compile, and then we can close that. Now we return to our player menu UI that we made in the last episode, and it's here we're going to start building the appearance of our menu. So I'm going to put in a vertical box, Inside that vertical box, I'm going to put in a horizontal one. This horizontal box will appear at the top, and this is where we'll put in our various page names. So if I put in my user created player menu page title UI and drag that in to each one, so I'll do this, we'll do it 4 times. So on each one, I'm going to change the page name to something here. I'm going to type in character. I'm going to change the second one here to inventory. Next one, we can go quests. And the last one, we're going to call it map. The character will be the first one that's going to be active, so I'm going to tick down one as is active and click compile. Now if I go back to my game and push play, turn on my controller. If I push the start button, you'll see the 4 options now appear with their correct titles, and because the first one is active, we'll make it orange. So now when I push the what we're going to make it so when I push the shoulder buttons, it switches between each one. So I'm going to stop what we've got here. And then we're going to go into our player menu UI. So the player menu UI, the way this is going to work is we need to go to our graph and set up an index. So we can go into add a new variable, and we call this one page index. And this is going to be an integer. We'll be using this integer quite a lot down the line, and it's going to help us indicate which page we should be on. So what we can do is go instance editable as well, so we can actually change this as we want to as well. So on the page index, we're going to make 2 functions, increment and decrement. So I'm going to make a function called increment page, and we'll make another one called decrement page. On increment page, we're going to take the page index value and choose get, and we're going to tell this one to increment. So it's going to add 1 to the page index. Now if this value is greater than a certain value, we're going to set it to reset back to 0, so it loops back around. So when we do is greater than, we're going to do an is greater than integer. And because it's a 0 base page index, so the first page is 0, second page is 1, 2 and 3, we're going to check whether or not it is greater than 3. Because I've got 4 pages. This will go into a branch and plug it in like so. So if it is greater than 3, we're going to set the page index back to 0. And then click compile. Then I'm going to copy pretty much all of this and go into our decrement page and paste that in. But this time, rather than the plus, we'll do minus to get the decrement. We're going to check, instead of greater than, we're going to check whether or not it is less than 0. And if it's less than 0, we're going to change the page index to 3. And then click compile. So there are 2 functions. Now we have to do calling of them. So my key down, which we set up last time, I explained how we use the switch on string here to indicate which key gamepad button is being pushed. So I'm going to add another pin to this, and case 0 is going to be changed to gamepad. And this is going to be a shoulder button. So if you don't know the name of the button, the easiest way to find out is go to your edit, project settings. And in these you can go to input, and if you just go to one of these drop downs and just search for gamepad, you will see all the various names for the various gamepad buttons. So we want the shoulder button. So if I go down, I should see left shoulder, right shoulder. Also got left trigger, right trigger. We'll just do the shoulder buttons. So I'm going to close this and go back to our menu, and we're going to name this one gamepad, and this one is going to be left shoulder. And we're going to add another one for the right shoulder. So gamepad right shoulder. So if we're pushing the left shoulder, we want to decrement the page. So drag that function out, plug into decrement. And if it's the right one, we're going to increment. So just reorganize our nodes here to make a bit more sense and be less tangled. And all of these need to be also handled as well. So I'll just plug that all into the handled function. Compile. So that will now increase and decrease its page index, but that's not actually going to do anything to our buttons. We need to link that now to our headings that we've got at the top. So if I go back to my design view and click on my horizontal box, I can now make this a variable by ticking its variable option. And let's name this one page names titles. If I go to my graph now, I should see that as an option in my variable list. So when I increment and decrement the page, I want to get my page name titles and get all the children of them. And that'll get me all 4 of these various blocks here. I then want to make sure I'm setting the one that I want correctly to be is active. So on my increment page, once we do here, actually let's make a function. Let's go new function and we go update title bar. And on this function, we're going to grab the page name titles variable, which we just made, get child at node, and you see index. That'd be our page index. This will return a child widget object reference, which we then need to cast to our button. So our button was called player menu page title UI. And from there, we can set active to be true. Compile, and let's go back to our increment and decrement pages. We're not just done there yet, but we will get back to it in a second. Let's just drag the update onto the end of each one of these. At the end of it, we're going to have to connect it to both true and false. So connect it up to true and then false, like so. And we do exactly the same on our decrement. So go update title bar, plug into true and false. Hit compile. So now let's test that out. Pause the game into our menu and use our shoulder buttons. You can see it now toggles them all on. It doesn't update it the other way yet. So what we have to do first of all is then go into our code and look at what we've done with our update title bar. So the update title bar is activating and updating the one that is active. Okay, that means we have to tell all the rest of them to be inactive. So the easiest way of doing that is still on here. We can just get all the children of the page name titles before we tell it to update it's active. So we're going to go page name titles, get all children. And then from that, we can go for each loop. And let's just give this one a bit more space, moving up here a bit. So on the loop, we're going to take each one of them and we're going to cast to player menu page title UI. And we're going to set the is active to false. So it turns them all off. Then when it's completed, we can connect that up to what we previously set up. So now it'll update the one that it should be on. Hit compile, close, and then test that out. If I push pause, my shoulder buttons, I can now select which page I should be on. Perfect. So the last thing we'll do here is just give a bit of spacing to each of my page titles so it looks a bit nicer on the eyes. So go to my page name, I'm going to select the top one here and I'm going to change it to fill and I'm going to type in the value of 0.25. And then go to the next one, choose fill, 0.25. The reason why I'm doing 0.25 is because 1 divided by 4, that's 4 titles, will give us even spacing for each one. Like so. And if I want to give a bit more spacing on either side so it tucks it all in, I can go to my horizontal box at the top and select the padding for left and right to be a certain value. So I can go 100 here and 100 on the right to give us a bit more spacing. And I can do the same for top as well. So I can go 100 there, maybe a little bit less there. I'll go for 50. There we go. And then click compile. And testing that out, I can pause it. I've now got my various options using my shoulder buttons to navigate between them. Now typically if you're playing a game, you would have the icons as well, indicating that you can use these buttons to navigate it as well, but that's for another time. Or maybe you could try and figure that one out yourselves. Now because these are buttons, they should also work with keyboard and mouse, but at the moment they won't do anything like that because they are separate things. So what I want to do is when I click on them, so go open up your page title, we're going to click on the page name button, and we're going to go to the graph and event graph, and we're going to click on the on clicked event. Now when it's clicked on, we're going to set it to be is active. So go set is active to be true, but that's not going to turn off the other ones. What we need to do is get hold of all the other ones that exist inside of its own parent. So to do that, we're going to get parent. Once you've got the parent, we can then get all the children of the parent, and that's how it will now get all its siblings. And now the rest of the code is similar to what we did on the update on the other menu. So here we can go to a for each loop, and we really should be doing that at the start rather than at the end. So on a for each loop, we can go for each one and set a cast to player menu page title UI, and set the is active to false, and then on completed, set this one but clicked on to be true. You can compile that and let's test it out with keyboard and mouse inputs. So if I click on inventory, quests, I can now jump between each one based on what I click on. And if I pick up my controller, you'll see, click on. Now if I pick up the controller, it doesn't work and continue where it's left off because the controller, remember, is separate from the keyboard and mouse. So what we need to do is update the page index to whichever one we click on to be the correct one. So if I click and close, cancel, we'll stop this. And then go into my page menu title UI, back to the graph. After we get the is active, we want to get the controller, player controller. And from there, we're going to cast to our particular controller, which is the RPG controller in this case. And because we are on the RPG controller, we now have access to the player menu because we stored it as a reference. So get player menu. And from there, we can set page index to a number. But which number do we set it as? Because this button doesn't know which number it is. So what we can do is, well, after we've got the all children here, we go find item, and for the find item we can select the self as the option to find. This will then output which index it is in that array. So if I now drag that over to page index, we can click compile, and that for testing purposes, let's just do a print string so you can see a bit clearer, and plug that in, hit compile. Now if I push play and go into my menu, if I click on inventory, it will now output 1, character 0, quests 2, map 3, and away it goes. The benefit of that is if I click on quests here, pick up my controller and use my shoulder buttons, I can carry on from where I left off, all seamlessly. So we've got a mix of gamepad and keypad support working just fine. So next job is we're going to create submenus and subpages to change based on what page index we're on. So join us in part 3 where we'll be going through how to accomplish that. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to support me over on patreon.com/RyanAiley, where you can catch the next episode right now. Plus many other videos too, including our Discord access and many other benefits. Big shout out and thank you to all those who are supporting me so far. Thank you, couldn't be doing this without you guys, so bravo to you guys, you're doing amazing, so thank you so much. If you have any comments, questions or queries, don't forget to chuck a message into comments below. Other than that, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.